This is a presentation on curriculum theory analysis. My name is Anna Salazar. I'm a campus coordinator, and in this role, I found that understanding how to design and plan, as well as implement and evaluate curriculum, has been vital. Next year, I'll have the opportunity to apply the foundations of curriculum instruction into my own classes as I prepare for planning my own units. What is curriculum? We know that education is a constantly changing field where best practices are constantly evolving. Curriculum is rooted in philosophy, history, psychology, and learning theory, and social issues. Curriculum also has many definitions. It is a plan. For me, it is a plan, that guiding roadmap that tells me how I'm going to teach something, why I'm going to teach something, and how I'm going to assess it. For others, curriculum is based on student learning experience. For some, it's a field of study, and others view it in terms of subject matter. The problems with definition are that curriculum is facing many challenges today in our current political climate. Curriculum is not necessarily explicit, as it's been pointed out by Ronald Dahl, who believed that every school has a planned, formal, acknowledged curriculum, but also has an unplanned, informal, and hidden one. Both parts are equally necessary because the formal curriculum addresses the goals of the subject matter, the learning content that is going to be covered, and how it's going to be met through assessment, whereas the informal one addresses the socio-psychological factors in our classrooms, such as student interactions and the student relationships. There are 4 philosophies that have influenced the American education system. We have idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism. Because of that, we have our 4 major educational philosophies that were able to emerge: perennialism, essentialism, progressivism, and reconstructionism. Perennialism is one of the oldest that influenced the American system until the 1990s. It is a more conservative theory, and it emphasizes traditional values. Some of those methods of instruction remain in our classrooms today as we practice Socratic seminars and even oral presentations. Similar to perennialism, essentialism emphasizes the acquisition of knowledge and morals. It is still very teacher-centered, and the essentialist educator cultivates students to be the best prepared citizens they can be. The No Child Left Behind Act was rooted in essentialist philosophy, as it aimed to close the achievement gap of students across the nation in areas such as math and science and reading and writing. Progressivism is more pragmatic, and it is student-centered. The goal is to teach students how to think instead of teaching them what to think. We want students to be problem solvers and know that scientific method. As a progressivist teacher, I find myself thinking that authoritarian teaching is not my thing. I want students to be driving their own learning, and extreme textbook use is also something I oppose. I agree with parts of that textbook movement. And also static resources. Again, education is constantly changing, and so should our instructional material. The historical foundations of curriculum. We have early schools having ties to the Puritan Church, and the focus was on literacy to ensure that citizens could read the scriptures as well as civil notices. Prior to the Revolution, education was not intended to teach democracy, but instead teaching morality. Dr. Benjamin Rush and Thomas Jefferson championed the establishment of public schools that would be funded through taxes. Unfortunately, their movement did not gain traction and was not legislated. So Thomas Jefferson believed that an educated electorate served as a check upon our government. Industrialization led to a modernization of curriculum because of the work of social theories from Darwin, Harbart, and Spencer, coupled with the pedagogical work of Pestalozzi, Froebel, and Marie Montessori. Friedrich Froebel's kindergarten movement was introduced in the U.S. with its child-centered early childhood approach, using stories, songs, and colorful materials. Psychology also influenced curriculum. We have behaviorism, and in this view, behavior is conditioned, and there is a relationship between the stimulus and the response, which leads to the formation of new habits or new learning. Albert Bandura contributed to this theory through his theory of observational learning. People learn through observing and modeling. In our classrooms, this looks like the I do, we do, you do. Cognitivism is more interested in how individuals learn. How is information acquired? Maria Montessori's curriculum emphasized looking and listening as a means to acquire sensory input. She believed that children all developed at different rates and required encouragement as well as intellectual stimulation, as is seen in some of those learning models that are used in Montessori classrooms today. Jean Piaget's work in the stages of development broke down what children should be able to do at different ages and allowed for educators to understand what was developmentally appropriate. Moving on to humanism, which draws upon the work of psychologists such as Abraham Maslow, who believed that education was aimed at helping create self-actualized people. He developed a hierarchy of needs, whereupon all aspects of that hierarchy needed to be met in order for an individual to be self-actualized. In order for students to learn, we know that their basic physiological needs to be met. They can't learn if they're hungry. They must feel safe and secure, and they must feel that sense of belonging. The purpose and scope of this assignment is to plan a unit of instruction using one of the models. We will also look at the implementation and evaluation of this unit, and then address that evaluation and any final thoughts. We are using the backward design 3 steps and the deliberation model, though not in fidelity. Beginning with our unit on World War I, we started by identifying those intended outcomes. What did we want students to learn? We started by looking at our standards, the text's essential knowledge and skills, and broke them down into knowledge and skills. In this, we also created our summary of learning with those learning objectives. We started and incorporating that deliberation model. At the beginning of the semester, we agreed that we were going to design lessons that integrated technology and met the needs of our increased bilingual population. We moved on to stage 2 and talked through our educational goals and instructional practices. For example, we had a teacher who wanted to keep direct instruction to a minimum of 15 minutes before moving on to our activity. And again, we created those success criteria that aligned with our learning intentions or learning goals. Again, we made our success criteria and learning goals student-friendly so that students understood the roadmap of that unit. We then moved on to the second step of the backward design model, assessment. We had formal assessments that would be given using our school, city, district platform that included questions that were aligned to that STAR 2.0. So we'd have inline, fill in the blank, mapping, and short constructed responses. Informal assessment included our pre-assessment, which would be given at the beginning of the unit, exit tickets, quick writes, Google mini quizzes, which gave us immediate feedback, peer shares, which allowed for us to hear and notice what students were saying with their peers, short constructed responses, which allowed for us to see where they were in that development of language and using academic vocabulary, feedback cycles, and posters. Then we moved on to that third step, that backward design model, where we planned our activities for each day. We included bell ringers, learning goal and success criteria, implementation, the direct instruction, activities, whether they were collaborative or independent, and ended with that assessment. Using the deliberation model, we came to an agreement on what would be taught in the curriculum and how that curriculum would be taught. Our team agreed that in the evaluation stage, we would use the modernist approach and the postmodern approach. We looked at that modern approach and analyzed our data. We know that if 30% of our students did not perform at grade level, we needed to pull small groups or do a reteach lesson. Catherine Taylor and Susan Nolan noted that we can't solely rely on data because it negates how randomized our schools are, and it also negates our campus diversity. Portland had to get spiraled back in as a result of that data dig. In that postmodern approach, we looked at that whole child approach. So we looked at that humanism of the child. Postmodern approach considers the reality that happens in our classroom daily, and we know that it can be chaotic at times, and that children are young and that they operate in a complex world. I was lucky that this unit was filmed as part of the coaching cycle, so I was able to watch it after my first class and I was able to make those adjustments for future classes. Overall, looking at that modernist approach and that postmodern approach in the evaluation helped guide my practice by being able to use that data-driven instruction to further drive student learning and further drive my own practice. And in that postmodern approach, it helped me acknowledge the individuality of each one of the students. Again, acknowledging the complexity that they live in and their own humanism. Children, they all still make mistakes and they're constantly learning.